Emergency Tsunami by NAV. Hey, Anthony Fantano, is this album going to get the not good rating from you? Because let me just say that sometimes I felt that in the past projects that you talked about, when it comes to NAV's music, I just felt that maybe you were just being a bit harsh on him. But honestly, after hearing this project myself, I can finally understand why, you do give NAV a hard time, or why he even makes it to the not good rating in your videos. You know what truly makes me kind of sad about being a reviewer is the fact that I said many good things about NAV's third studio album that came out earlier this year, back in April, I believe. I said many good things about Good Intentions. I've said many good things about NAV there. I was praising the fuck out of him in that album review, and now I am struggling to say anything nice about this album in particular. Don't get me wrong, Good Intentions was not a perfect album at all. It obviously had its issues. It had like some stuff that Nav could improve on his part. But when I first heard that project earlier this year, I actually found myself like finding a lot of like more high expectations for Nav, because he showed obvious improvement in both his flow, his singing voice, the production value, and it was easily better than Bad Habits. Good Intentions was an album that I enjoyed way more than Bad Habits, so it definitely had that for me, and that's why I thought that was more of him finally making a comeback and showing why he doesn't really like deserve this like shit talk by a lot of critics. And I don't want to say that this new project was terrible. It had a few aspects to it of why I kind of did enjoy it, but when I compare this album to Good Intentions, it just really isn't his best project. Hell, if I compare this new project to the fucking album Reckless, this new project is still not as good as the past few projects that I did hear from Nav. Nav joins forces with the producer Wheezy, somebody who I personally think always decently dominates any project that he's a part of, and they both pretty much come together to attempt to give the world something they've never heard before. A project that is supposed to be very different from any other project that has come out this year, or just like any project that has come out so far, like in the past like few years, I guess, and to pretty much try and give us an album that a lot of people are going to remember for a very long time now. Sadly, I don't think that anyone is going to remember this project even a year from now, because it unfortunately turned out to be a very generic and just forgettable album. To be completely honest with you all, there's actually one main reason why I, fairly enjoyed this project, and it was the fact that Wheezy himself was taking full control of the whole production value. I personally believe that Wheezy is a very underrated and a very underappreciated producer, which sucks because he is obviously super talented. I think his craft is fucking perfect, and he definitely like does bring something new to the table, and he just pretty much like dominates any project that he's a part of. I really enjoyed all the overall 808s beats throughout this whole album that Wheezy provided. He definitely did add something new when it comes to a trap album. Trap is a genre that I don't really, pay much attention to. I don't really fuck with trap, but I really did not mind, what Wheezy provided for this album, and he did overall provide something new when it comes to a NAV album. I mean, this is pretty much, something that we've never heard when it comes to, the past few projects that NAV has dropped. And although the production value is the biggest highlight on here and should be the reason why people would want to even give this album a try, sadly, that alone didn't save the album, because of just how generic and unfortunately how awful it was at times. Now, I've said in many videos in the past that I do think that Nav is a pretty like unique person. I really do love his style. I love his overall unique style. I think that he is a pretty dope artist that is for the most part like contributing very well to the EXO label. But I just unfortunately found myself to be very disappointed in him throughout this whole album. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some, moments, very tiny moments in this album where Nav is, the main attraction and is a pretty like huge highlight, especially that, his flow, at some points do work well with the kind of beats that Wheezy makes. And I think that for the most part, he did, contribute well to what, Wheezy was, doing with his craft. But for the most part, it just seems that Nav just kind of like stayed with this, like comfortable, style that he's been doing for the past few projects, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just that, he just didn't really contribute well to, trying to provide an album that's supposed to be, remembered for decades, and it's just the fact that he just stuck with this like same, boring flow that it just really didn't like work out with the kind of beats that Weezy was making. And the guest list definitely didn't help out at all, considering that most of the tracks, consist with very laughable features with people like Young Thug and Lil Baby. I just don't think those two work really well with this kind of project. I know that NAV has done, songs with them in the past, and, admittedly, some of those songs were pretty dope, but I just don't think they really like worked well with the kind of production that Weezy was doing. They just didn't really like make the effort to, I guess, like change up their flow a bit to like work well with this production value. Like they definitely didn't adapt well. There was only one track with the feature on this album that I did enjoy, and it was the track entitled Young Weezy with Gunna. Gunna, who barely makes this particular track, bearable to hear. I don't really like his music, but I didn't really mind him at all throughout this whole album, because he did easily better than Young Thug and Lil Baby. I think the reason why I still feel a bit of like a disappointment is because this track was a really great opener. It actually got me excited to see what this album was going to turn out, and unfortunately it just went all downhill from there. It's really unfortunate because I actually really think that Weezy did a phenomenal job throughout this whole album, and it just sucks that he just seems to get stuck with making these like very like generic and mediocre albums. It definitely isn't Weezy's fault at all. It's just the fact that the people that he collaborates with don't really adapt well to the kind of producer that he is, and it's just unfortunate that this album turned out the way it did, because I feel that if it had a lot more effort by the artists themselves, then maybe it could have turned out to be an album that people would remember for decades. I really wanted to enjoy this album, y'all, but like, I'm sorry, I guess it just wasn't for me. I don't think I can recommend this one to anybody, even if you're a big NAV fan. I just don't think that it's an album that should be like considered a great album in his discography. It's just one of those unfortunate situations where the album like had a lot of potential, but it just didn't turn out the way we all wanted it to, and it's just it's just unfortunate. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click that bell down below, all that good stuff, and don't forget to stay happy.
I can fly 3 of my homies on a 20-passenger jet. I can put it in my rotation that she'll never get upset. I can make sure when I touch down, I go straight into my